Hello, and thank you for joining us for the Black Hills IP webinar, Navigating the Boundaries, Safeguarding Generative AI in a Rapidly Evolving Landscape. A recording of this episode and the slides will be made available on the Black Hills IP YouTube channel, as well as the Black Hills IP website. Feel free to enter any questions using the Q&A feature in the Zoom menu. We invite you to follow us on LinkedIn and visit the Black Hills IP website to learn about our other webinars. And with that, I'll turn things over to Jim.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Hallenbeck. I'm the President and CEO of Black Hills IP. Thank you for joining our webinar today. We're excited about artificial intelligence and how we're improving our products and improving the service we provide our customers and help improve the efficiency of your IP back office and the profitability of your law firms and the helping control the cost of your IP operations inside of your corporations. To those ends, today we're going to talk about navigating the boundaries of artificial intelligence and safeguarding generative AI in a rapidly evolving landscape. And to those ends, we have two speakers today, Dr. Manjit Rege and Tom Marlowe. Dr. Rege is a professor and department chair of graduate programs in software and data science, and he's the director for the Center for Applied Artificial Intelligence at the University of St. Thomas. Dr. Rege is an author, mentor, thought leader, and a frequent speaker on big data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence technologies. In addition to being continuously engaged in teaching and research, Dr. Rege frequently consults and mentors various industry-leading organizations as an expert who provides guidance for building machine learning and AI practice and applying innovative data science approaches. Really cool stuff. And Dr. Rege works with us and helps consult with us to bring our products to market as well and to help build out our service offerings to help you, our customers and our community. Tom Marlowe is our other speaker today. Tom is a patent attorney, and he spends his time these days as the Chief Technology Officer here at Black Hills IP. He's also the president of our Black Hills IP renewals business. He was previously Chief Patent Counsel at Fairchild Semiconductor and in private practice before that with Schwegman, Lundberg, and Wissner. To those ends, Tom's going to share a few words before he hands it off to Dr. Rege.
All right, thanks, Jim. So that's right, Tom Marlowe here with Black Hills. And if you've attended our data science or AI webinars in the past, I just want to say welcome back to everybody. If you're new, of course, glad to have you here. We're continuing this current webinar series, again, focused on some of the new and interesting technologies that are making waves and how they might be used in our field. Most industries these days are being impacted by the advances being made in computational intelligence, data availability, certainly, and the IP field is no exception. In fact, it's really moving along in this aspect. Unfortunately, for many, these technologies and these processes and some of these new things that are coming out can be confusing. They can be kind of a black box, seeing what goes in and what goes out, but not always knowing how things work in the middle. So as always, the goal with these webinars is to showcase these new technologies and also dig into how to use them, how they work, and how they might help advance our industry. Here at Black Hills, if you've heard any of our talks or any of our marketing, and in line with what Jim was mentioning, we really value using technology to assist our people and empower our customers. This could be big data tools, complex expert systems, process automation, and of course, artificial intelligence. It's important to us that what we do is not just a black box. These technologies, we believe, are the future for this industry, and we want all of you that are joining us here to be there with us. Now, enough of that. Again, I'm joined by Dr. Manjeet Rege, renowned expert who always, puts anything that I have to say about technology to shame. So Manjeet, I'm gonna hand it over to you, and you can take it away from here. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Tom. Thank you, Jim, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon to talk more about generative AI. In the past, we have spoken about AI as a broader field. We have spoken about machine learning, but specifically in the past 7 months, a particular branch of AI, that is generative AI, has caught everybody's attention. And that has primarily been due to ChatGPT that was released at the end of November of last year. Generative AI is a fascinating field of study that has seen tremendous progress actually in the past few years, even though it came to everybody's attention only in the past 7 months or so. So it involves training machine learning algorithms to generate new content. So that new content could be new images, music, it could be text. But the best part of all of this is that the new content that is getting generated closely resembles human created content. So sometimes it becomes difficult to differentiate between which is real content that has been created by a human and what has been artificially generated by AI. The algorithms learn from vast amounts of data and can then generate new content based on the patterns and styles they have learned. Now, this has opened up exciting possibilities, but also raises important ethical and societal concerns. That is the focus of our webinar this afternoon. But let us start on a positive note here about why there is so much buzz. If you look at the news in the past few months, every major company is investing heavily, specifically in generative AI, to make certain enterprise level strides. Generative AI is transforming every aspect of the human experience, and these tools make us more human, more creative, inspired, and connected. So as we all are excited about these potential opportunities, I'm also convinced that we need to make sure we build these tools with positive intention, with a strong foundation in ethical and responsible reasoning. Now, from the very beginning, the developers of artificial intelligence have been aware of the incredible power of many of these tools. And often, there have been talks about some of the ethical challenges that might arise when we eventually deploy them. Now, even though we have been aware of the power of AI, AI was never into the hands of a layman for a long time. But in the past few months, these apprehensions have reemerged with a sharper edge. So researchers and now policymakers are exceptionally concerned by the potential ways that AI could increase bias, could make the world more unequal, and could do so in ways that are many times invisible to us, primarily because AI is around us in every software that we end up using. Now, generative AI has immense potential, and that is why there has been so much attention over generative AI in the past few months. The applications to various fields and industries, I mean, there are too many of those. So let's explore some of the potential benefits it offers first before we talk into, before we get into some of the ethical challenges. The reason it has received so much attention is because you have a lot more choices now in terms of improving your content generation for social media. Generative AI can assist artists, musicians, writers by generating novel and inspiring content. It can serve as a tool for inspiration and exploration. In industries like product design and architecture, generative AI can rapidly generate design alternatives, helping designers explore diverse possibilities. So in a manufacturing, setting, you might want to create like a digital twin before you actually manufacture the actual physical prototype. In recent times, user experience, user preferences have been around personalization. How can I personalize a service or a product offering for an end user? Generative AI can analyze user preferences and behavior and deliver personalized recommendations, products, or services, overall enhancing that user experience. And if you enhance a user experience, that user ends up coming back to use your service on a regular basis, resulting in increased revenue as a result. And finally, automation. Generative AI can automate repetitive or time-consuming tasks such as content creation or data synthesis, freeing up human resources for more complex tasks, and even programming, right? So just a couple of days ago, OpenAI released a code interpreter, which is a feature in the Chat GPT Plus version, that is a paid version, where you can have Python program being written and you can upload your own data set to Chat GPT, and it can analyze that data for you that you uploaded. It can create visualizations, charts, and things like that. Now, many of the ethical concerns that AI researchers have been aware of for a long time are coming to light in a very real way. And primarily in the past 7 months, after the emergence of ChatGPT and after people realizing the power of AI as it becomes more and more stronger. So whether it is some of the pioneers in AI like Jeffrey Hinton from Google quitting Google after having worked there for a long time, or the head of OpenAI, Sam Altman, testifying before Congress. So all of these efforts by different people are so that attention could be drawn towards the fact that before it gets too late, AI needs to be regulated. So what are some of those ethical and societal concerns that have been expressed? While generative AI offers tremendous potential, like some of the examples that I mentioned about its applicability. It also comes with several ethical and societal concerns that need to be addressed. First is bias and discrimination. Generative AI algorithms learn from training data, and if that data contains biases, the algorithms can perpetuate those biases in the generated content. So this can lead to discriminatory outcomes, reinforcing existing societal biases that exist. So if you have in an HR application, most of the applicants were males compared to females, it has been shown that those tools have had more preference towards the male applicants. Deepfakes and misinformation. The technology behind generative AI can be misused to create convincing deepfakes or spread misinformation. Now, this poses significant risks to individuals and societies as it becomes increasingly challenging to distinguish between genuine and artificially generated content. Now, there has been a lot of talk about intellectual property infringement issues as well. An artist in the past used to take a lot of time and used to put in a lot of effort in creating an art. Now you have AI that has learned from worldwide available data and is generating content at scale, replicating or looking very similar to a human artist generated content. So generative AI raises challenges regarding the ownership and copyright of generated content. Now, it is important to determine the rights and responsibilities in cases where AI systems generate content that resembles existing copyrighted works, and that is an ongoing legal and ethical debate. Security and privacy. So any malicious use of generative AI can compromise security and privacy. For instance, unauthorized access to generative AI systems can lead to identity theft or manipulation of personal data, posing serious risks to individuals' privacy and security. Addressing these concerns is crucial to ensure that generative AI is developed and deployed in a responsible and ethical manner so it can benefit society as a whole. Here I mentioned about deep fakes, and deep fakes are videos primarily of celebrities or people in government where the content that is generated is artificial, but it looks real. So it could be a deep fake video, it could be a deep fake audio. Here is one such deep fake video of Morgan Freeman.
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality. Now, what do you see?
So deepfakes take their name from the fact that they use deep learning technology to create fake videos. Deep learning technology is a kind of machine learning that applies neural network simulation to massive data sets. AI effectively learns what a particular face looks like at different angles in order to transpose the face onto a target as if it were a mask. Now, huge advances came through the use of generative adversarial networks, typically abbreviated as GANs, G-A-N-S. So basically, it pits two AI algorithms against each other, one creating the fake content and the other grading its efforts, teaching the synthesis engine to make better fakes. The technology behind deepfakes offers many interesting possibilities for various creative sectors, from dubbing and repairing videos. Now, consider the idea of deepfakes. That's trying to pretend to be a trusted person in your organization, delivering fraudulent information to your customers, or even advising them to take dangerous or potentially risky courses of action. At the most basic level of a deepfake is a video that uses impressive technology to replicate a subject's likeness to replace another's face, essentially shape fitting one person into another. So the results, as you saw here, can be impressive, sometimes can be funny, as I'll show you as well, but they can also raise concerns about privacy manipulation as well. Now, deepfakes have come so far in recent years that there is now a TikTok account dedicated entirely to celebrity deepfakes. So there is a deepfake Tom Cruise account on TikTok.
Not easy to do, but with discipline and hard work. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's crazy.
So, and this was Tom Cruise. This is Keanu Reeves' TikTok account. So this one doesn't have sound, but he's mostly seen doing things, but they look extremely realistic. Now, how do you detect deepfakes, right? Because there are these filters available where you could be talking to somebody over like a Zoom call, and that person might look like somebody it could look like a celebrity, but how do you really detect that this person is real or it is fake? So research published by this organization called metaphysic.ai has put forward a potential countermeasure. So it suggests that if you suspect you're on a video call with an imposter, there's a simple test that could give them away. And the trick is very simple. Just ask the person you're talking to turn to the side. So, they carried out a series of tests with the tech guru Bob Doyle using deepfake technology to turn him into various famous people, including Ryan Reynolds, Keanu Reeves, Tom Cruise, and many others. So looking face on, all of the deepfakes looked pretty convincing. However, when Doyle was asked to turn 90 degrees to the side to present a profile view, you could notice that it wasn't working out. So why did it not work? First, the standard software that estimates facial poses in deepfake videos, known as facial alignment network, doesn't do too well at acute angles. So most 2D based facial alignment algorithms assign a lot more landmarks to the front of a face than they do to the side. As a result, when a subject turns to profile view, obscuring half of the front of their face, the algorithm has less of a canvas to work with. Secondly, there are simply far fewer profile images to work with. Even celebrities like Tom Cruise, who has been photographed and filmed from every conceivable angle, don't tend to be seen in profile as much as they do face on. So as a result, from a training data perspective, you have a lot more data of these examples with face on than with the side profile. So when the actual subject there turns into side profile, the algorithm kind of falls apart. Now, this is one way. The other is, there's another trick. The researchers have also suggested that anyone suspecting a deep fake could ask the person to place a hand over their face. Now, when a hand comes in the middle, the algorithm does not work anymore, as you will shortly see here. So once again, the training data has these face-on images without the hand, and the deep fake technology does not work when it has to kind of also adjust its algorithm in real time when suddenly a hand pops up in the middle. Now, those were examples of deep fake videos, but there are also deep fake audios where a voice resembling somebody else's is generated artificially. And there are softwares, there are services out there that help you do that. Companies like Levin Labs, Resemble AI, Respitcher, Play.ht, they all have launched free services that clone a speaker's voice from brief samples. And YouTubers, content creators have created such hundreds and thousands of videos. So this is one such funny one where we have 4 US presidents arguing over a card game. So this is a deep fake audio.
Isn't this nice? It's just one of those days you got to just get out and give the old wrinkle skin some sun rays.
This is so lame, Joe. Hey, I know. I just got the Doomslayer skin in Fortnite. You guys want to go inside and watch me get a couple dubs?
Michelle said we can't come inside until we get some sun. She's making pizza.
Oh, I just love Michelle's pizza.
Yum, she makes good pizza.
Go fish.
It's Uno, George.
Oh, right. That means I get to go again, right?
No, that's not in the rules.
That's how we've always played it at my house. When you lay a reverse card, you get to go again.
We're not playing with house rules, Jack. We're being official.
House rules don't mean anything here, fool.
My turn then.
You son of a gun.
I know you are, but what am I?
Here's something that will knock your socks off.
Gosh darn it. Oh, wait, take this draw 4. They stack if I put one
What
on.
the No, that's just another one of your house rules.
Donald's right. That's another house rule.
I've literally played it like that with everyone I've ever met.
The rules are as clear as day. Hell, it's been that way since this game was called two-card butterscotch. Back when Hard Hat Lenny was out on the old train tracks and we'd play until there was a rock in the shoe, and sure enough comes little Sally Salisbury.
Fine.
My turn again.
All right, now me.
Uno. You didn't say Uno.
Literally wasn't out of my hands yet.
Yes, it was. You didn't say Uno.
I saw it clear as Mama Christmas. You set the card down and didn't say it. Draw 4, crack.
Do you even know what that means?
It means buddy.
Oh, here comes Kennedy.
Hide the cards.
Hey, fellas.
Hey, Kennedy.
Why, if I didn't know any better, I'd think I saw 4 presidents hanging out without the potty master Kennedy.
Oh, no. These guys were just stopping by.
I'm just yanking your chain. For real, though, when are we going to hang out again? Get the Fantastic Five back together again?
Oh, here we go. I'm gonna grab a beer.
We used to go on benders all night, driving crazy. Listening to Kendrick and Jay-Z. Wake up with crazy hangovers. What happened to those guys?
I guess life just catches up with you sometimes.
So, as you can see, when you have a particular subject with a lot of content already out there, whether it is video, whether it is audio, AI has now become so powerful that you can generate new content based on that. And there are services out there that help you create those. As I mentioned, there are companies that have launched services that help you create these deepfake audio and videos. Now, apart from the deepfake concern, we've seen that with the advent of chatbots everywhere, we know that without ethical design, chatbots might give false advice, maybe to medical practitioners or to students, information that sounds logical, truthful, but in fact based on inaccurate or untruthful information, and perhaps information that has never been audited by a human being. So chatbot inaccuracies has also been a concern with generative AI. So here is an example where this was asked who won the Super Bowl. This was before the Super Bowl actually took place, and it gave a very confident answer that it was held on February 6th, which is actually not true. It was held on February 12th. And so it got this part correct, that it was between the Chiefs and the Eagles, but it got the other part wrong. That is, in fact, the Chiefs won. So that part was wrong. But the way it is expressing this information is with a lot of confidence. And when you have information being presented to you with a lot of confidence, you tend to then believe it. You don't get to see the other alternate information out there that you would typically see in a traditional search, where then at the end of it, you as a human would make a judgment about what is correct and what is not correct. Another example of the chatbot Bing AI giving out wrong information. So in this case, it was asked about summarizing information, financial information about the company Gap. All of the financial information about that company is publicly available, but the way these algorithms sometimes works is that if it cannot come up with an answer, it will just create one. So if it cannot detect, if it cannot search or find that answer, it will generate that answer and give it to you. So if you actually compare the financial details of the statements of the company and what the chatbot is presenting here, there are some factual inaccuracies. But because this is so convenient, you just ask the chatbot a question, and the answer that you get is so confident, you tend to believe it because it's a lot more work for a human to go and actually compare and get the actual factually correct information. And then, issues about fundamental ownership, questions about legal and copyright. Who owns the ideas and products that are created by generative AI? And we are just beginning to resolve them. So as we see here, Japan's government reaffirmed that it will not enforce copyrights on data used in AI training. Now, so this news is part of Japan's ambitious plan to become a leader in AI technology. Not everyone in Japan is on board with this decision. Many, artists are concerned that AI could lower the value of their work. But in contrast, the business sector is pressing the government to use the nation's relaxed data laws to propel Japan to global AI dominance. And with the effective implementation of AI, it could potentially boost the nation's GDP by 50% or more in a short time. So for Japan, which has been experiencing years of low growth, this is an exciting prospect at the cost of, walking over the rights of some of the artists. So to safeguard generative AI, we need to focus on several key areas. Data ethics and bias mitigation. We must be diligent in collecting and pre-processing data, ensuring fairness and minimizing biases in the training process. Explainability and interpretability of the models. Developing methods to explain and interpret the decisions made by generative AI. We don't want AI to be like a black box, that we do not know why a particular information was made up. Robustness and security. We need to fortify generative AI systems against adversarial attacks and give more importance to data security to prevent unauthorized access or manipulation. User content and control. Users should have control over their data and generated content, and developers must obtain informed consent for using personal information. So ChatGPT has made this change recently, where you can go into the settings and disable data collection. But by default, it is collecting all of the information that you're providing to it and using that for further improvement. And then ultimately, AI model is only as good as the data it was trained on. And your first iteration of the model is never going to be the best ever. So regularly monitoring and auditing generative AI allows us to detect and mitigate potential risks or unintended consequences. Now, I'm no legal expert. I'll let the legal experts speak about this, but legal and regulatory landscape surrounding generative AI is still evolving. Intellectual property laws, there are ongoing discussions. I mentioned that example from Japan on how generative AI affects copyright, ownership, licensing, and particularly when it comes to generated content. Privacy and data protection. Developers need to comply with existing data protection regulations and give more importance to individuals' data used in generative AI systems. liability, establishing frameworks to address liability and accountability is crucial in cases where generative AI systems cause harm, because your people are looking at the generated content as a guiding light. So where does the liability end? The AI service that is generating the content that people are following, or is it the training data that somebody else has prepared? And then this is a global phenomenon, right? Encouraging global collaboration and coordination among governments and researchers can lead to a consistent legal standards and guidelines. Now, AI, one part is AI development and the other is deployment. Developers of generative AI systems should follow best practices to ensure responsible and ethical implementation. Developers should collect diverse and representative data while respecting privacy and obtaining consent from data sources. Rigorous testing and validation processes are extremely important to identify and mitigate biases, errors, and unintended consequences. Documentation, should provide clear information about the development process. Where did the data come from? And were there steps taken for minimizing or mitigating bias? And then developers should plan for regular updates and improvements to address emerging risks and challenges as the field keeps on changing. I mentioned about bias. So mitigating bias in generative AI is essential for ensuring fairness and inclusivity. Using training data that encompasses a wide range of demographics and perspectives, ensuring inclusivity and reducing bias is extremely important. Implementing techniques to detect and correct biases during the training process, right? So before the problem actually happens, minimizes the likelihood of biased outputs. So if I wait for too long until the model is deployed, I would have to then take corrective measures, but I would rather address that when the model is being developed. And then, I have mentioned about regular auditing for continued improvement. And at the end of the day, you're doing this for humans. So feedback is extremely important. As I mentioned earlier, our queries that we have typed into ChatGPT, and many times when it asks us thumbs up or thumbs down, helps improve its learning over a period of time. Now, apart from development of AI, attention also needs to be given to deployment of generative AI. So embedding ethical frameworks and principles into the development and deployment of generative AI systems to guide responsible decision making. Humans in the loop is extremely important, especially during the deployment. So integrating human oversight and control throughout the generative AI process, ensuring accountability and reducing the risks associated with automated decision making. And all of this is new. So user education and awareness about the do's and don'ts with generative AI technology, its capabilities, and potential risks to empower users to make informed decisions is important as well. Impact assessment. So, conducting comprehensive impact assessments to evaluate potential social, economic, and ethical consequences of generative AI deployment, enabling proactive mitigation of the potential harms is something that needs attention as well. So there needs to be work. This is not one company's work. This is not one country's responsibility. There needs to be collaboration and industry standards that have to be put together that will eventually play a significant role in the responsible development and deployment of generative AI. Encouraging collaboration among, industry stakeholders, different researchers, policymakers helps in exchanging insights, best practices, and of course, if there are lessons learned about where we have gone wrong or where one country has gone wrong, where one industry domain has gone wrong, one can go and make those changes. And that is where that continuous monitoring comes in. So extremely important to create new platforms and forums for ongoing learning, feedback, and improvement, which will eventually foster innovation and responsible practices in the field of generative AI. There is no question in the economic value that generative AI will create worldwide. But at the same time, we have to be careful about some of its limitations and the harm it can do to society as well. At this point, I'll hand it over to CTO of Black Hills, Tom Marlowe, about the great work Black Hills does in terms of embracing generative AI in everything that they do.
All right. Thanks, Manjeet. I think to follow on your material just a little bit, I have two quick points here on the more, let's say, complex end of things, and we'll taper down from there a little bit to, I think, a space that's more widely applicable, or I should say, will be more widely used within the IP realm. So if, along what you were saying, if you're building or maintaining ML models, so you're really getting kind of into the thick of the technology, using data from various sources, it's really important to understand some of the details surrounding that data collection. This is going to be kind of from that legal angle, particularly if the data you're using is externally sourced, as opposed to your internal data. It's one thing to build those models on internal, say, documents and checklists and spreadsheets and that type of stuff that you have that is your own data. Although even there, I'd maybe caveat that it's worth looking at what parts of your internal data may have originated elsewhere. That happens a lot. And kind of what that data is comprised of. I'll touch on that in a minute with regard to data maps in just a second. But when dealing with external data, the important thing to consider is where that data is coming from and what are your, say, rights or limitations to use or process that data. There have been a few cases over the past few years regarding data collection. Two of them I have bulleted here. Clearview AI is probably most prolific. They've been dealing with GDPR, so mostly in Europe, although I believe in California as well, not GDPR, but California's version, and data privacy issues. I believe they've received negative rulings in France, Greece, Austria, maybe some other countries or jurisdictions. They provide facial recognition technology, so you can see that there might be some privacy concerns that arrive. So the main kind of brunt of the issue is in how the data that they're using was collected. Obviously, we're dealing with very personal data when you're talking about a person's face, so it falls into that PPI realm of data and how it was collected. Another one that's been more recent, obviously OpenAI and their ChatGPT tool have been widely in the news. In the last several months, OpenAI had its software restricted in Italy due to age verification concerns. So this is collecting data, not necessarily having good data collection safeguards around verifying that the data was coming from a user, say, over the age of, I think, 13 is the cutoff for that. So age verification concerns brought up by a watchdog group. They worked to get back in compliance, and I believe they are back and live in Italy again now, which is nice to see them fix things out of that. These types of scenarios, they're important to keep an eye on, especially when using external data, and particularly when using external personal data. So regardless of where your data comes from, having an understanding of what you use for data and how you use it can be very important. So a data map, and this is a simple, good practice that I recommend, is useful to keep on top of the data that you use. It's basically a list of kind of your data sources or the data that you keep, what that data comprises and how you process it. They do not have to be overly complex. In fact, I prefer the simpler the better, as it helps make upkeep easier. Something simple and up to date is going to be better than comprehensive but not kept. And at a high level, you identify the data you're collecting, what you're collecting it for. So not necessarily each piece of data, say in a table, but the types of data you're collecting or you're using, what you use it for, how you collect it, like where was it from, where do you keep it, and what do you do with it? So the processing or movement, meaning we collect it from X, we look for Y, and then we plug it into another application. And that's sufficient to kind of keep on top of your data. All right, so reeling in the technicals just a little bit. For many in practice, exposure to AI technologies is not necessarily going to be through developing models, but rather through using tools that are on the market, already built for a purpose. And I'm sure many on this webinar already use or at least have played with one or more of the tools. This chart has a number of them. This is probably just a fraction of what is actually out there, but you can get a sense of kind of how prolific these technologies are, especially across industries and across applications. They're evolving, they're expanding every day. And a lot of them are extremely useful. So, what does this mean for firms and professionals who are inevitably going to get exposed to, or need to get exposed to, or need to use these tools in one way or another? So first and foremost, as attorneys, we have to look at duties and requirements. In many jurisdictions, the rules of professional conduct include a duty of technology competence. The application of this section can sometimes be vague or gray. You may not need to know how to build and run AI models, but if you use some of these tools, there is a good chance that you have a duty to understand the implications, what they are and what they are not really as well. There was a case earlier this year where a brief was written by an attorney or a pair of attorneys, filed with the court with the aid of ChatGPT. And if you ask me, that in and of itself, not necessarily a problem. Like, it's good to be using tools that are out there, except that the attorneys apparently did not thoroughly review the content that was generated. It turns out that I believe it was 6 cases that were cited in the brief were unfortunately completely fabricated by the AI tool. Here's one of the examples: Varghese v. China South Airlines Limited, 925 F3rd 1339, 11th Circuit, 2019. It's not a real case. It doesn't exist, but it looked really real in the brief that was, or in the language that was generated by the AI tool. And when the judge was reviewing it, he thought something was up because the judges on this made up case didn't look right to him as being 11th Circuit judges, or at least one of them was out of place. And if you read the quote that I put up here, this was a quote from the judge. Its legal analysis is gibberish. The summary of the case is procedural history is difficult to follow and borders on nonsensical. So that, I mean, that's not great to have a judge say about your brief, regardless. It's even worse when you use a tool to generate the brief and then you don't review it to find that not only is the argument terrible, that's, one strike, but secondly, you're using fake cases. That's really not good. My understanding is that the attorneys faced fines, some sort of sanctions for their, let's say, reckless actions. They may have even gotten off a little bit light on this, given the circumstances. It's up to you to form your own opinions on that. But bottom line, don't do this. It's important to know what you're dealing with generative AI tools, or work with and oversee someone or a company that you trust to handle the technical details for you. And we'll give you something that either has the appropriate caveats, points to review, or has been reviewed before you use it. Okay, so Dr. Regge talked about quality. I want to talk about quality just a bit too. I'd be remiss if I didn't reinforce the point here, especially in light of the last slide and the potential impact on attorneys' practice and really their general trustworthiness. Look, if these tools can be incredibly useful. They can be time-saving, really time-saving, but they have limitations. With current technology, it's a good idea to consider most of the tools out there to be, let's say, useful supplements to human work. But just having wrong information is not the only thing that we need to be concerned with. For certain applications, the source data may be important to understand to know if there's going to be any issues using, say, paraphrased versions of the training data that's used in the model. Content ownership may come into play. This topic is one that's evolving in courts, and so it's definitely worth staying tuned on how things develop. At the end of the day, the simplest recommendation is to make sure that you understand how the tool that you're using works, what its limitations may be, and that you give its results a good review before passing along what comes out as work product. So confidentiality, export control, this area is one of the larger issues that I think firms and practitioners should be aware of, particularly when working with sensitive information. The issue is really based on how available and easy to use many of the current tools are. ChatGPT, for example, is extremely easy to throw data in and see what comes out. It's very tempting to use for just about anything. Most of the tools using these tools don't take a lot of time. Most folks don't take a lot of time to understand the data privacy and the security aspects of the tools. It's something that a lot of times just goes overlooked. So I think let's take a minute here to look at a couple of the big ones. So OpenAI, they're the folks that make ChatGPT. They also have a set of APIs that are used on more of an enterprise basis, like a B2B type of basis. A lot of the generative AI tools, like the apps and the mobile apps, the web apps, that type of thing, use OpenAI's APIs or a similar set on the back end. So it's worth understanding. Oh, can we go back to that last slide real quick? What their privacy policies are. So on the OpenAI APIs, as of March 1, so they changed their stance. They don't use the data submitted by customers to retrain and improve their models unless you opt in to share that data. Now, this is big because prior to March 1, it was an opt-out. So by default, if you sent some data in, so let's say you're asking for a summary of an invention from an inventor that's not yet filed. If you send in the invention disclosure, that invention disclosure could have been used as training data for their model. And some version of that could get manipulated or paraphrased into a response that comes out of the tool later on. So it's really something important to be aware of. So on the next slide, their ChatGPT tool is a much more consumer-facing as opposed to the enterprise-facing APIs. And so its policies are lighter, let's say. So for the ChatGPT and the DALL-E, that's their image generation, they use the content, the prompts, what you send into it to improve their services. So that means it could go into the training, it could get reused, it could, and I would be very concerned about sending any kind of sensitive data into a tool like that, because you don't have clear knowledge or control over how it's going to get used on the other end. It is possible to clear out your data. There's a 30-day term on it, and you can opt out. Google's Bard, which is their kind of version or competitor to ChatGPT. I won't go through all of the details here, but the last bullet point, I think, is the most poignant. Don't include confidential or sensitive information in your Bard conversations. And I think that really gets to the point and would be the recommendation that I would push along as well. Unless you know that it's not going to be reused to train public models, that your data is not going to be used for some other purpose, don't share confidential or sensitive information. So depending on what you're implementing or what you're planning, the key elements are going to differ a little bit. Quality is always a factor, but vendor data handling is going to be worth understanding, especially if you'll be using potential sensitive information with the tools. So this slide gives you a little sense of the things to be considering as you're looking at implementing tools like this.
Hey, Tom, how do we handle those options at Black Hills?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And the way that I like to deal with these things, because as you can imagine, with how much we use technologies, we've kind of got our feet in multiple pools here. And it depends completely on the type of data that we're dealing with. If we're trying to do, say, like an analysis of a public data set, it's less concerning what tools that we're using or what the privacy or security policies are. So we might play around with some of that with something like a Chat GPT or those types of APIs. If we're talking about something where we're doing analysis, say data processing on something that's not published or more sensitive data, that's got to be something that is either a secured, non-shared model, or it's something that is a local model that we are managing, to be sure that that data isn't going to be kind of floating outside of the walls that we want to have up around that type of sensitive data. So I think the simplest answer is we do a variety of it based on the sensitivity of the data. So if you do tackle these projects in-house, know how to track your data. It's if you're getting into the technicals of it. If you work with third parties, understand their practices, and that's a simple conversation. A lot of folks publish that stuff too on their websites. There's a lot of new tools popping up every day with the ease of use of some of these generative technologies, particularly the large language models, which are really fun to use too. The barrier to entry is really low these days. So
Tom, if I'm an attorney in practice and I haven't looked into this technology yet, what do I need to concern myself with any of these issues? What do I need to think about?
Yeah, so even if you haven't looked into it yet, like from a legal requirement perspective or a licensing perspective, you might not have a huge duty of to go out and research it if you aren't using it yet. But it's something you may want to be looking at anyway, like from a business perspective, because a lot of firms are picking up on this stuff, leveraging it either for automation or for driving work efficiency. And at some point, it's going to become a gating factor as far as competitiveness from an efficiency perspective. So it's something I would start getting an understanding on now, because ultimately, at some point, it's going to work its way into some portion of everyone's practice, and it's going to be good to be in front of that 8 ball so that you know how to handle it.
Do you think of this more as a word processor in about 1982?
Yeah, completely. I think in short order, which could be measured in years, some version of this type of technology is going to be touching the work that all of us are doing. And you might not know it. It might be built into the word processor. It might be built into a PDF processing tool that you're using. It might be built into something that's creating shells, but it's going to be there. So it'll be good to understand at least what the implications are, how these things work, and what questions you need to ask as you're going along and moving forward in practice. And frankly, the legal implications, they're developing as the technology develops, maybe not quite as quickly, but they are moving along. And over the next months and years, we're going to get a lot more guidance on how to operate. So hold on tight. It's gonna be a fun ride in this area. So with that, Let's see, did we have any
I had an
questions?
observation, Tom. I said,
Yeah.
so we're at a point now in this conversation where we've had kind of two parts to this webinar. One was Dr. Reggae at the beginning, who talked about AI in general and going into specific instances of it. Also talking a little bit about the legal implications and potentially what sort of legislation, or at least the considerations for legislation going forward. And then on your side, Tom, you spoke about how it's being implemented in practice of IP law, and a bit about how we're doing things at Black Hills. And so just taking a step back and looking at, what are the implications legally on the front end and then ethically on the back end. I think, there's probably a future webinar series, or at least one or two webinars we could probably do on those specific topics. But one thing came to mind to me is that, and I haven't heard about this, talked about too much, but Dr. Reggae's discussion kind of made me start thinking about this with regard to Japan and how Japan is looking to build out their economy to be kind of this haven for AI. And the thing there I haven't heard talked about much is preemption and kind of like forum shopping for where to locate your server farm so that you can perform the nefarious act in a friendly jurisdiction, which would be non-infringing. And then the result of that, what's the impact of bringing that back into a jurisdiction where that act would not be acceptable. So I see that. And then also I see that as a consideration that we need to start thinking about in view of, the college textbook copyright case a few years ago, and also what I think it's LG v. Quanta on the patent side. And then on the ethics side, yeah, I think that's a whole other discussion that needs to be had yet. So we did have a general question about that. So I just wanted to point that out, that yeah, this is evolving and we don't have all the answers on that yet. And I think it's a conversation, and I think we should do a future webinar series on both the legal implications and also the ethical implications. So yeah, looking forward to that in the future.
Yeah, and that'll be a good one. So everyone, keep your eyes open. We're going to be continuing this series as long as these technologies keep moving forward. And Jim, the one around those legal implications, I think would be particularly interesting. And I think we'll be taking a lot of guidance from the PII information handling and how we've seen that play out cross jurisdictionally. So I think there will be a lot of insights we can drive from that.
Indeed. And also if anybody on the call or listening to a recording of this has any ideas or has any questions about that we could address in a webinar around AI, please do send those in. You can send those, and any questions you have for Black Hills IP or Dr. Reggae or Tom or me to info@blackhillsip.com, info@blackhillsip.com. So we kind of ran late today. Are there any questions that we could answer before we go? Okay, I don't see any being submitted right now. So Tom and Dr. Reggae, do you have anything further to add?
No, not from my end. I think this was great. And thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll continue coming up with great webinars for our audience.
Thanks, everybody.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Tom, and thank you, Dr. Reggae. We appreciate your contributions today. And thank you to everybody who tuned in. And